She came to me in the booth. I told her to leave, but she wouldn't listen. I didn't mean for it to happen.
Saturday, October 12th, just after the 4:30 Mass, the church was almost empty, rain drumming on the roof like impatient fingers. I was in the confessional, finishing the last penitent, an old woman who stole grocery money from her sister's purse. Routine. Absolved. Go in peace. I was sliding the screen shut when I heard the door on the other side open again. Soft footsteps. The kneeler creaked under almost no weight at all. Then silence. Long enough that I thought maybe someone had just come in to pray. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. Finally, a whisper so small I had to lean toward the screen. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. This is my first confession in 3 years." A boy's voice. Couldn't have been more than 16, maybe 17. Cracking a little on the edges, the way voices do when they're changing or when they're terrified. I gave him the usual line, "The Lord is ready to forgive, take your time," and settled back. He didn't start with the normal stuff. No, I cursed, I skipped Mass, I looked at porn. He just breathed for a while, shaky, like he was trying not to cry. Then he said very quietly, "I think I killed someone, Father." I've heard that sentence before. Drunk drivers, soldiers home from war, an old man once who backed over his wife in the driveway. You learn to keep your face still and your breathing even. But something in the way this kid said it, like he was surprised the words had actually come out, made the hair on my arm stand up. I asked the only thing you can ask. "Tell me what happened, son, from the beginning." Another long silence. Then the story started coming out in pieces, slow, like he was pulling splinters. His name, he never gave it and I never asked, was Caleb. 17. Senior at St. Ignatius High, right across the parking lot from the church. Good grades, quiet, ran cross-country. Lived with his mom in the apartments behind the Walmart. Dad gone since he was 6. He said it started last spring. His mom, Lisa, started dating a man named Darren. 42, divorced, worked construction. Moved in with them after 3 months. Caleb hated him from the first day. Not dramatic hate, quiet seething, the kind teenagers are especially good at. Darren drank. Not falling down drunk, just steady, mean drunk. He'd call Caleb Princess when he came home with good report cards. Called Lisa worse things when she tried to defend her son. Never hit them, Caleb said. Not yet. But the threat was always there, hanging in the air like cigarette smoke. Caleb told me he started praying Darren would disappear. Not die, just leave. Every night after his mom cried herself to sleep, he'd kneel by his bed and beg God to take Darren away. He even lit a candle once at the grotto behind the rectory. 7-day candle. Wrote Darren's name on a scrap of paper and burned it in the glass. Old school stuff he'd read about online. Nothing happened. Darren stayed. The yelling got louder. One night in August, he threw Lisa's phone against the wall because she was texting her sister too much. Caleb stood in the hallway holding a baseball bat behind his back, shaking so hard he thought he'd be sick. That was the night he decided prayer wasn't enough. He told me he found a forum. Not the dark web or anything Hollywood, just a corner of Reddit that's gone now, shut down after too many kids started asking the wrong questions. A place where people talked about banishing others. Not spells exactly, more like focused intention. Writing the person's name 13 times on black paper, folding it toward you, burying it under a rock at a crossroads at midnight. Stupid, harmless teenager occult stuff. Caleb knew it was dumb even while he was doing it. But he was desperate. He did everything the post said. Took a Polaroid of Darren sleeping on the couch, mouth open, beer can on his chest. Wrote the name. Folded the paper. Rode his bike at 11:47 p.m. to the intersection of County 17 and Old Mill Road. Dug a hole with his hands. Buried the photo and the paper under a chunk of limestone. Pissed on it for good measure. Somebody on the thread swore that part sealed it. Then he went home and slept better than he had in months. 2 weeks later, Darren was dead. Not a car accident, not a fight at a bar. He just dropped. 42 years old, no history of heart problems, collapsed in the parking lot of the Quick Mart getting cigarettes. dead before the ambulance got there. Autopsy said massive coronary, undetectable blood clot, act of God, the coroner wrote. Caleb sat in the back row at the funeral home and watched his mother cry into a wad of tissues while strangers told her how sorry they were. He said he felt nothing, not even relief, just hollow. Then the dream started. Every night Darren came back, not bloody or rotting, just standing at the foot of Caleb's bed in the same gray t-shirt and work jeans, staring, not speaking, just staring until Caleb woke up gasping. The dreams got worse. Darren started moving closer, sitting up on the edge of the bed, leaning over him. Once Caleb woke up and swore he felt cold fingers around his throat, squeezing just enough to leave faint bruises his mom thought were hickeys from some girl. That's when Caleb came to me. He finished telling me all this in a voice that got smaller and smaller until the last sentence was barely air. I think I really did it, Father. I think I cursed him and God let it happen because I asked in hate. I sat there in the dark confessional trying to remember how to breathe. My mind was racing through every possible response, psychological explanations, scrupulosity, grief, coincidence, but none of them felt honest, because I've been a priest long enough to know that sometimes the simplest explanation is the ugliest one. I asked the question I hate asking teenagers: do you want to be forgiven or do you want to be right? He started crying then, not loud, just a soft, broken sound like something inside him finally tore loose. I gave him absolution, told him to destroy everything he still had from that night, the leftover black paper, the shovel he used, all of it, and to pray the Divine Mercy chaplet every day for Darren's soul. He promised. I heard him leave. The door closed, rain on the roof again. I thought that was the end of it. It was. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing Caleb's voice in the dark. I think I really did it, Father. Over and over, like a scratched record. Around 3 in the morning, I got up, went to the church, and opened the tabernacle just to stare at the Eucharist and ask the same question I've asked 1,000 times. Where is the line between imagination and reality when a soul truly believes it has blood on its hands? The next week was normal on the surface. Masses, baptisms, a funeral for Mrs. Kowalski who finally lost her fight with cancer. But every time the confessional door opened, I braced myself for Caleb's silhouette. He never came back. I told myself that was good. Kids make dramatic confessions, receive absolution, and move on. That's how it's supposed to work. Then on the Thursday after All Saints' Day, I got a call from the principal at St. Ignatius High. Caleb hadn't been to school in 4 days. His mom thought he was with friends. Friends thought he was homesick. Nobody had actually seen him. Police were doing a welfare check. They found him in his bedroom, sitting on the floor in the corner, knees pulled to his chest, staring at nothing. Alive, but barely. Dehydrated, malnourished, eyes wide open like he'd seen something he couldn't unsee. He wouldn't speak. Not to the officers, not to his mother, not to the paramedics. Just kept rocking and whispering the same 2 words under his breath. He's here, he's here. They took him to Mercy General, psych ward, 72-hour hold. His mom called me from the parking lot sobbing, begging me to come. I went. The ward was the usual locked door fluorescent hell. Lisa was sitting on a plastic chair outside his room, mascara streaked down to her chin. She grabbed my hands like I was the last priest on earth. He keeps asking for you, Father. Only you. He won't let the doctors near him unless you're there. I went in. Caleb was in a paper gown, strapped to the bed with soft restraints because he'd tried to claw his own eyes out the night before. His arms were wrapped in gauze. When he saw me, his whole body went rigid. Father, he rasped, tell them to let me go. I have to finish it. I sat in the chair beside him. The nurse closed the door, gave us privacy. Finish what, son? He turned his head toward me, slow, like it weighed 100 pounds. His eyes were bloodshot, pupils blown wide. I lied in confession, he whispered. I didn't tell you the worst part. I waited. He swallowed, throat clicking dry. When I buried the paper, I didn't just write his name 13 times. The thread said if you really wanted someone gone, you had to give something in return, a trade. I thought it was bullshit, but I did it anyway. He started shaking. I cut myself here. He lifted his left wrist. The gauze was fresh, but I could see the older scar underneath, thin and deliberate. I bled on the photo, 3 drops, and I said the words. I said, take him instead of us. I meant instead of me and Mom. I said it out loud. His voice cracked. 3 days later, he was dead, and now he wants the rest of the payment. I felt the room tilt a little. I've heard every variation of teenage guilt, but this was different. This was specific, ritual, intentional. Caleb, I said carefully, you're sick. You're dehydrated, your blood sugar's probably crashed, you haven't slept. No, he cut me off suddenly loud. You don't understand, he's here right now. He stared past my shoulder at the empty corner of the room. He's standing right there. He's been following me since the funeral, at first just watching, then closer. Now he touches me. Cold. Always cold. Last night he sat on my chest while I was sleeping and told me the debt isn't paid. He said a life for a life, and I only gave him 3 drops. He started crying again, but silently, tears sliding sideways into his ears. I tried to give him more, he whispered. That's why the scratches. I tried to open the vein all the way, but the nurses keep stopping me. I don't know how long I sat there. My collar felt like sandpaper. Finally, I did the only thing I could think of. I asked the nurse for a cup of water and a straw, told her it was for communion. She didn't argue. I took out my little emergency kit, the one with the tiny host and the oil. I gave him communion right there in the psych ward, restraints and all. He received it like a drowning man grabbing a rope. Afterward, he calmed a little. His breathing slowed. He looked at me with something close to peace. I'm sorry I lied in confession, he said. Will you hear the rest now? I told him yes. I would hear it all properly when he was stronger. He nodded, closed his eyes, and for the first time in days he slept. I left the room thinking maybe, just maybe, we'd turned a corner. We hadn't. That night he hanged himself with the call light cord, while the night nurse was on break. They found him at 3:14 a.m. The nurse came back from her smoke break, saw the call light dangling, the cord knotted around his neck and tied to the bed rail. He'd managed to sit up just enough, loop it twice and drop his weight forward. Paper gown, bare feet, face purple. By the time they cut him down and started compressions, he was gone. I got the call at 3:37. Chaplain's office has my cell for exactly this reason. I was already awake, sitting in the rectory kitchen with a cup of coffee I hadn't touched. When the phone rang, I knew before I answered. Lisa was screaming in the background when the nurse handed her the phone. I could hear her howling my name like I was the one who'd murdered her son. I drove to the hospital in my pajamas and coat, ran 3 red lights, didn't care. By the time I got there, they had him in a room down the hall from the psych ward, sheet pulled up to his chin, machines turned off. Lisa was on the floor outside the door, rocking, hitting her head against the wall over and over. A social worker was trying to pull her away. I stepped over them both and went in. He looked 12 years old lying there. All the anger and fear drained out, just a skinny boy with acne on his chin and a bruise shaped like a necklace. I closed the door, locked it, didn't ask permission. I stood at the foot of the bed and stared at him for a long time. Then I did something I have never done for a suicide before and hope I never have to do again. I anointed him anyway. Conditional absolution. The church says if there's any chance of perfect contrition in the last moment, we can still give the sacraments. I didn't know if Caleb had perfect contrition. I didn't know if he changed his mind halfway through the drop and begged God to take it back. I only knew I wasn't willing to gamble his eternity on policy. I took the oil out of my coat pocket. I'd started carrying it everywhere after the first time he told me, made the sign of the cross on his cold forehead, on his stiff hands. I prayed the apostolic pardon like I was shouting it into hell itself. When I finished, I kissed his forehead the way a father kisses a child who's had a nightmare. Then I opened the door and let them wheel him away. The funeral was 4 days later. Closed casket. Half the school showed up in their Letterman jackets and hoodies, crying like they'd lost a brother. Lisa sat in the front pew doped up on Ativan, staring at nothing. I preached the safest homily I've ever given, something about God's mercy being wider than our understanding, about despair being a lie the devil tells us when we're tired. I didn't believe a word of it that day. After the burial, Lisa asked to speak to me alone in the parish hall. Everyone else had gone, just folding chairs and the smell of burnt coffee. She waited until the last person left, then closed the door and looked at me with eyes that weren't really seeing anymore. "He left you something," she said. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope, thick, sealed with too much tape. My name written on the front in Caleb's handwriting, blocky, careful letters. He told me if anything happened to him, I was supposed to wait until after the funeral and give this to you. Only you. He said you'd know what to do with it. Her hand shook so hard the envelope rattled. "I don't want it in my house anymore." I took it, felt the weight, something hard inside, rectangular. Lisa left without another word. I heard her car start, heard the tires spin on the wet leaves as she peeled out of the parking lot. I sat down at one of the folding tables and opened the envelope. Inside was a spiral notebook, the cheap kind from the dollar store, cover half torn off, and a flash drive in a plastic bag. The notebook was full. Page after page of Caleb's writing, dates starting the night he buried the paper and photo. At first it was just angry rants, how much he hated Darren, how scared he was for his mom. Then it changed. After Darren died, the entries got shorter, neater, like he was trying to stay calm. September 9th, he stood at the foot of my bed again, didn't speak, just pointed at my wrist. September 14th, I can smell him now, beer and sawdust and something underneath like old pennies. September 28th, he whispered tonight, said time's almost up, said 3 drops wasn't enough. The last entry was dated the day he died. "I'm sorry I lied again, Father. I didn't try to kill myself because I was crazy. I did it because it was the only way to pay the rest." He told me if I finished it myself, he'd leave Mom alone. He promised. "Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I love her. And tell yourself you tried." Under that, one more line in different ink, shaky, like it was written after everything else. "He's behind you right now." I looked up from the page. The parish hall was empty, fluorescent lights humming, rain on the windows. I turned slowly. Nothing. But the temperature in the room had dropped 20 degrees. I could see my breath. I opened the plastic bag and took out the flash drive. There was only one file on it. A video. Timestamp the night before he died. I sat in the empty parish hall with the envelope on the table in front of me, and the flash drive between my fingers like it was burning. The building was locked, lights off except for the exit sign and the glow from the vending machine down the hall. I didn't want to watch it here. I didn't want to watch it anywhere, but I knew I would. I took everything back to the rectory, locked the door, closed the blinds, and plugged the drive into the old laptop I keep for hospital paperwork. One file, 11 minutes 47 seconds. File name, for Father John, MP4. I clicked play. Caleb's bedroom. Phone propped up on his desk, angled toward the bed. The only light came from a street lamp outside the window and the faint blue of his computer screen. He was sitting on the mattress in boxers and a hoodie, knees pulled up, rocking slightly. His face was thin, eyes sunken. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. He stared straight into the lens for a long time without speaking. Then he started talking, low and fast, like he was afraid he'd lose his nerve. I'm recording this because I don't think I'm going to make it to confession again. I tried to tell you the whole truth in the hospital, but they sedated me before I could finish. I need you to know I'm not crazy. I know how this sounds, but you have to believe me. He swallowed hard. After Darren died, I thought it was over. I even felt guilty for feeling relieved. Then the dream started and I realized the thing I did, it wasn't magic, it was a door. I opened a door and something walked through. Not Darren. Darren was just the price. Something else took his place. He leaned closer to the camera. His breath fogged the lens. It wears his face, but it isn't him. It's older, hungry. It stands in my room every night and waits for the rest of the payment. It told me 3 drops was the deposit. Full payment is a whole life. Mine, Mom's, whoever's closest when the time runs out. His voice cracked. I tried to close the door. I went back to the crossroads at midnight with salt and holy water I stole from the church. I dug up the rock, burned everything, prayed every prayer I know. Nothing worked. It just laughed. It stood right behind me while I was digging and laughed with Darren's mouth. He started crying then, but kept talking through it. Last night it gave me a choice. It said if I finish the payment myself, willingly, it will leave Mom alone forever. It promised, and I believe it because it's patient. It can wait for another family, another angry kid, but if I do this, the debt dies with me. He wiped his face with the sleeve of the hoodie. I'm going to do it after I turn this off. The call light cord is long enough. I practiced the knot. I'm sorry I'm such a coward that I have to record this instead of telling you in person. But if I wait until tomorrow, they'll just sedate me again and it will come for Mom next. He looked straight into the camera, eyes red but steady. Tell my mom I love her. Tell her I'm not doing this because of her or because I'm sad. I'm doing it because I'm the one who opened the door, and I'm the only one who can shut it. He reached forward, the screen went black. But the audio kept running. 30 more seconds of silence, then breathing fast and panicked. A soft creak of bed springs, the rustle of fabric, a choked sound, half sob, half gasp. Then a voice that was not Caleb's. Low, wet, almost amused. Good boy. Click, end of file. I sat there until the sun came up. I didn't move, didn't pray, didn't cry, just stared at the frozen black screen and felt something inside my chest turn to ice. When the church bells rang our morning mass, I unplugged the drive, put it in the envelope with the notebook, walked to the parking lot, and burned everything in the metal trash barrel behind the maintenance shed. I watched until there was nothing left but ash, then scattered the ash in the creek that runs behind the property. I thought that would be the end. I was wrong again. 3 weeks ago, Lisa came to Mass for the first time since the funeral. She sat in the back, same pew Caleb used to hide in when he was little. After communion, she waited until everyone left, then walked up to the altar where I was cleaning the vessels. She didn't speak at first, just reached into her purse and pulled out a single Polaroid photograph. It was Darren, asleep on the couch, mouth open, beer can on his chest. The same photo Caleb had described burying. The corners were scorched, like it had been through fire but hadn't burned. On the white border at the bottom, written in black marker in handwriting I didn't recognize. Debt paid in full. Thank you for your son. Lisa looked at me with eyes that had died months ago. He mailed it, she whispered. No return address, postmarked 2 days ago. She laid the photo on the altar and walked out. I still have it. It sits in the top drawer of my desk, wrapped in purple cloth under the extra hosts. Some nights I take it out and stare at it. Some nights I swear the eyes in the picture are open. And some nights, only some, I hear footsteps in the hallway outside my room, slow, bare feet on tile. They stop outside my door. They wait. Then they walk away. I haven't heard them in 3 weeks. I think it's looking for the next angry kid. And I think about Caleb every time the confessional door opens and a teenager kneels down and starts with, "Bless me, Father. I've never told anyone this before." Because now I know what can happen when a child asks God, or anything else that might be listening, to take someone away. And I know the price is always collected. Always. I stopped sleeping in the rectory bedroom after the footsteps started. I moved a cot into the sacristy, right behind the altar, because whatever walks those hallways at night has never crossed the threshold into the sanctuary itself. Not yet. I tell myself it's because of the blessed sacrament in the tabernacle. I'm not sure I believe that anymore. The days are easier. Sunlight keeps most things at bay. I say Mass, hear confessions, visit the sick, smile when people tell me how good I look for being almost 60. They don't see the circles under my eyes or the way my hands shake when I lift the chalice if I've had less than 3 hours of sleep. They don't hear the questions that loop in my head like a scratched rosary bead. Did I fail him? Did I absolve too quickly? Did I miss the moment when mental illness tipped into something darker? Or was it dark from the beginning, and I just called it guilt because that was safer? I started doing something I never thought I would. I began researching, quietly, carefully. Not the occult nonsense Caleb found, that path is poison, but older things. Deliverance prayer logs from the diocese archives, case files from priests who did minor exorcisms in the 70s and 80s, psychiatric reports where patients described the exact same bargain experience. I told myself it was pastoral diligence. Truth is, I was looking for proof that I'm not losing my mind. I found more than I wanted. There's a pattern. Angry prayers offered in real hatred mixed with blood or grave dirt or some other binding agent, and then a sudden unexplained death, followed by the slow collection of the debt. Always a teenager, always someone who believes they caused it. The church files called them self-imprecation cases. The psychiatrists called them delusional guilt with ritual reinforcement. I call them Caleb's. There are 12 documented cases in the Midwest alone since 1998. 4 ended in suicide, 3 in disappearance. The rest stopped, just stopped. No explanation. Files closed with the same line, subject reports presence has ceased. No further incidents. I read those files until my eyes bled. Then I started looking for the ones who stopped it. Only one name came up more than twice. Father Anthony Morrow, retired, living in a nursing home outside Peoria. 87 years old, lucid on good days. I called and asked if I could visit for a spiritual conference. He agreed immediately, like he'd been waiting. I drove down on a Tuesday in February, ice on the roads, heat barely working in the old Buick. The nursing home smelled like every other one, bleach and pureed carrots. Father Tony was in a wheelchair by the window, oxygen tubes in his nose, hands twisted with arthritis. But his eyes were sharp. He didn't waste time on small talk. "You've got one on you," he said the moment I sat down, not a question. I nodded. "Boy or girl?" "Boy, 17. He closed his eyes and made the sign of the cross with fingers that barely bent. "How far?" "Along." He finished the payment himself 3 months ago. Father Tony exhaled through his teeth. "Then you're in the echo stage. It's tasting the air around you now, seeing who else in your orbit is angry enough, lonely enough, stupid enough to make a trade." I leaned forward. "How do you stop it?" He looked at me for a long time. "You don't stop it, you outlast it, or you become the new door." He told me the rest in a voice like dry leaves. In 1983, he had a girl, 15, same story. Angry prayer, blood offering, sudden death of the stepfather. Girl started seeing him every night. Father Tony tried everything, blessed salt, minor exorcism, moving the family to another state. Nothing worked. The girl hanged herself in the new house exactly 40 days after the stepfather died. Father Tony went to the crossroads where she'd buried the offering, dug it up, burned it, prayed over the ashes until his voice gave out. The thing came for him that night. Not the stepfather. Something older wearing the stepfather's face sat on his chest and told him the contract had transferred. The girl had paid the deposit, now the priest would pay the balance. It followed him for 7 years. 7 years of footsteps, cold hands, whispers in empty churches. He aged 20 years in 7, lost 30 pounds, started drinking the altar wine, almost left the priesthood twice. Then one night in 1990, during a Lenten vigil, he was alone in the church praying the office of the dead for the girl. He got to the part that says, "Deliver me, O Lord, from eternal death on that dreadful day," and something shifted. He felt the weight lift, like a hand letting go of his throat. He never heard the footsteps again. I asked what he did differently that night. He looked out the window at the gray sky. "I forgave her," he said simply. Not absolved, forgave, out loud. Named every sin she thought she'd committed, every hate she'd carried, and I told her I forgave her on behalf of the man she killed, on behalf of her mother, on behalf of God himself if that's what it took. And I begged her forgiveness for failing her. He turned back to me. "The debt isn't blood, son. It's unforgiveness. That's the real coin. As long as someone carries the hatred, the girl, the priest, the mother, the door stays open. Forgive completely and the thing starves." I drove home in silence. That night, I did the only thing I could think of. I went to the church at 2 a.m., opened the tabernacle, and took out the reserved sacrament. I laid Caleb's scorched Polaroid on the altar in front of the ciborium. Then I did what Father Tony told me. I forgave him. Out loud. I forgave him for lying in confession. I forgave him for the ritual. I forgave him for hating Darren. I forgave him for killing himself. I forgave him for leaving his mother. I forgave him for every terrified, stupid, desperate choice. And then I begged his forgiveness for every time I treated his confession like just another teenager being dramatic. I cried until I had nothing left. When I finished, the church was silent. No footsteps. No cold. Just the sanctuary lamp flickering like it always does. I fell asleep on the altar steps with my head on my arms. I woke up at dawn to the sound of the maintenance man unlocking the doors. The Polaroid was gone. Ashes in its place. I thought the ashes meant it was finished. I swept them into my hand, carried them to the creek behind the rectory, and let the water take them. I watched the gray swirl disappear between the rocks and whispered Requiescat in pace, like it was any other funeral. Then I went inside, showered, shaved for the first time in days, and said the 8 a.m. Mass with a lightness in my chest I hadn't felt since October. People noticed. Mrs. Delgado told me my homily on mercy was the best she'd heard in 40 years. The altar servers asked why I was smiling during the consecration. I told them it was just a good morning. They believed me. For 11 days, the footsteps never came. I slept in my own bed again. I stopped jumping when the floorboards creaked. I even started to believe Father Tony was right. Unforgiveness was the coin, and I had finally paid it in full. Then Lisa came back. It was a Wednesday evening just after the 6:30 Mass. Most people had gone home. I was locking the side doors when I saw her standing by the votive candles. Same black coat she'd worn to Caleb's funeral, hood up even though it wasn't raining. She was lighting candle after candle, an entire row, hands shaking so badly the lighter kept clicking without flame. I walked over slowly. "Lisa." She didn't turn around, just kept trying to light the candles. When she finally got one to catch, she spoke without looking at me. "He's in my apartment now." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" She turned then. Her face was gray, eyes sunken the way Caleb's had been at the end. "I thought it was grief," she said, "seeing him in the corners of my eyes, hearing the floor creak like H. His footsteps when he'd sneak in after curfew. I told myself it was normal. Mothers do that. But last night he sat on the edge of my bed and spoke with Caleb's voice. She started crying without sound. He said, "Mom, why didn't you forgive me?" over and over. Then he smiled the way Caleb never smiled, too wide, too many teeth, and said the debt transferred again. That I'm the last one who still hates Darren for what he put us through. He said hate keeps the door open wider than anything else. She reached into her pocket and pulled out another Polaroid. Same photo, Darren on the couch. But now the eyes were open, black and shiny, and across the bottom in fresh red marker, 3 times the charm. She pressed it into my hand. "I don't want it anymore. I don't want any of it." She walked out before I could stop her. I stood there holding the picture while the candles she lit burned down too fast, wax pooling like blood. That night the footsteps came back. Not in the hallway this time. Inside my room. I woke at 3:03 a.m. to the sound of someone sitting in the chair beside my bed. Slow breathing, the creak of old wood. I didn't open my eyes, I couldn't. A voice, Caleb's voice, but flat like it was coming from underwater, whispered, "You only forgave me, Father. You never forgave him." I lay there frozen, while the temperature in the room dropped so low, the crucifix on the wall frosted over. "You have to forgive Darren too," the voice said, out loud by name or Mom's next. Then the chair creaked again, and the presence was gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. At dawn, I did the only thing left. I went to the cemetery. Darren's grave is in the county plot, no headstone yet, just a plastic marker with his name and dates. I stood there in my coat and collar, freezing rain starting to fall, and I said his full name out loud for the first time in my life. Darren Michael Hayes. I forgave him. I forgave him for every beer he drank instead of being a man. I forgave him for every cruel word he spoke to a boy who was only trying to protect his mother. I forgave him for the fear he put in that house. I forgave him for dying and leaving the bill to a child. And then I begged his forgiveness for judging him when I never sat across the table from him, never heard his confession, never once offered him the mercy I claimed to believe in. I stood there until my shoes were soaked through, and the rain turned to sleet. When I turned to leave, the plastic marker was cracked clean down the middle. I haven't heard the footsteps since. Lisa came to Mass last Sunday, first time in months. She brought a small framed photo of Caleb, his last school picture, and placed it in front of the statue of Our Lady. She lit one candle, only one. Afterward, she waited by the doors. "He's gone," she said simply. "I woke up this morning and the apartment felt empty, in a good way, like someone finally closed the windows after a long storm." She hugged me quick and hard, then left before I could answer. I still keep the broken pieces of that second Polaroid in the purple cloth with the hosts. Sometimes I take them out and look at them. The eyes are closed again. The writing has flaked away. I don't know if I closed the door, or if the thing simply moved on to some other angry kid in some other town. I only know that every time a teenager kneels in my confessional now and starts with the words, "I wished someone was dead," and then they were, I stop breathing for a moment. And then I ask them the question Father Tony taught me. Do you want to be forgiven, or do you want to be right? Because I finally understand the difference. And I understand the price. May God have mercy on us all.